Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. A group of moderate Democrats have now joined Republicans in an effort to reopen government. What has been achieved to end the longest shutdown in history? President Trump grants pardons to more than 70 figures linked to the efforts surrounding the 2020 election, including Rudy Giuliani. Vance attending the Marine Corps' 250th birthday ball in Washington. We discuss the significance of the day with someone who has served 24 years in active duty. The Supreme Court today has declined to overturn a 10-year-old ruling on same-sex marriage, plus a ruling on mail-in ballots and oral argument on a matter involving religious freedom. Trump threatens to sue the BBC for $1 billion. It comes after revelations that the BBC selectively edited Trump's January 6th speech and made it look like Trump was encouraging violence. The BBC said the edit was an error of judgment. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to travel to Canada this week for a meeting with a group of 7 foreign ministers. The topics Rubio is expected to discuss while there.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
And thank you for staying with us. President Trump hosting Syria's President al-Shara in the White House and threatening to sue the world's largest broadcaster for $1 billion over its edit of his January 6th speech. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent, Mari Otsu, who's at the White House. Good afternoon, Mari. Tell us, what's the latest?
Don, good afternoon. President Trump here is meeting with Syria's President al-Shara in the first visit by a Syrian head of state since 1946, which is when Syria gained independence from France. And the White House says that the meeting is part of President Trump's broader push to pursue peace in the Middle East. And to help the U.S. fight terrorism in the Middle East, the U.S. envoy to Syria, Tom Barrack, says that al-Shara is expected to sign a document today formally entering Syria into the anti-ISIS campaign led by the U.S. Let's take a look at President Trump discussing his hopes for Syria during his trip to Saudi Arabia back in May. Watch.
Likewise, in Syria, which has seen so much misery and death, there is a new government that will hopefully succeed in stabilizing the country and keeping peace. That's what we want to see in Syria. They've had their share of travesty, war, killing, many years. That's why my administration has already taken the first steps toward restoring normal relations between the United States and Syria for the first time in more than a decade.
Al-Shara was formerly the leader of the U.S.-designated terror group al-Qaeda before he formally broke ties with the group back in 2016. And al-Shara led the forces that toppled the Assad regime, which was the totalitarian dictatorship that governed Syria last December. And he's since vowed to transform Damascus, the capital of Syria, from an exporter of crisis to, quote, an opportunity for peace for Syria and the Middle East region. The U.S. sees its support for al-Shara, including by lifting all of the sanctions on Syria, as essential to reducing Iran's influence in the country and preventing the Islamic State from reorganizing. Don.
So, Mari, on another topic, President Trump's threatening major legal action against the BBC. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, President Trump and his legal team are threatening to sue the BBC for $1 billion over its edit of President Trump's January 6th speech in a documentary. In a letter to the BBC, President Trump's legal team demands the company, quote, immediately retract the documentary by this Friday, November 14th, calling it both false and defamatory. Let's take a look at the BBC's edit versus the original clip. Watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
This is coming as the CEO and the director of the BBC resigned on Sunday. And on Monday, the chair of the BBC apologized for editing the footage, but rejected claims of bias in the BBC's reporting. And in another related development, President Trump is granting pardons for dozens of figures involved in his effort to challenge the 2020 election outcome. Don, back to you.
All right, Mari, thank you. President Trump hosted the president of Syria at the White House today and suspended sanctions on Syria under the Caesar Act with some exceptions. Ahmed al-Shara is a former terrorist leader who successfully led a rebellion against longtime Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Al-Shara took power in December of last year and since then has been working to strengthen relations with the outside world. Trump was the first world leader to lift sanctions on Syria. The UN recently followed. Joining us now to discuss is Middle East expert Rabbi Abraham Cooper, former chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. He serves as the Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action for the Simon Wiesenthal Center. So, Rabbi, thank you for joining us today. What do you think President Trump is hoping to come out of this meeting?
Well, I think President Trump, of course, thought of the Abraham Accords in his first term and sees the possibility of the movement with Syria to jumpstart, if you will, Chapter 2. Specifically, though, in terms of Syria, I had a chance to meet with this new president a few weeks after he took over power together with my colleague and friend, Reverend Johnny Moore, in Damascus. And I think the president of the United States was asking over these months the same questions we posed to the president and the foreign minister. How do we know you can deliver? And how do we know we can trust you? Well, when you're president of the United States and you have that kind of leverage, which is to take off the sanctions that would enable Syria to try to recover from Assad the father and Assad the son and the years of civil war, it's a very dynamic and gutsy decision by the president, which I think is going to show, and I hope for the people of Syria, it's going to bear fruit. And obviously, in addition to what will happen domestically, because Syria's history of being belligerent vis-a-vis the state of Israel, obviously that's going to be a very important question. And right at the nexus of all of this are the fears that we heard about when we were in Damascus of Christians, obviously also of the Druze and other minorities, still not sure where this new president who comes with a terrorist background, where is he actually taking the country? So there are major questions, but today with the meeting in the White House, the signal I think from President Trump is that there's going to be significant movement in the right direction in terms of the issues that individuals and groups like us have raised.
So can we explore that issue of where he's taking the country, as you mentioned, because I understand you've met the Syrian president. What was your impression of him? And maybe you can discuss his vision, in your view, for Syria and the Middle East.
Well, yeah, I mean, probably the last place in the world I thought I'd ever land up would be Damascus. I grew up in New York with the children of Syrian Jews who fled Assad Sr. So I'm very familiar with the subculture. And during the 2-hour meeting with the new president, I think the key issue that we wanted to hear about was what about the protection and the rights of groups like the Druze and the Christian minorities, some of whose leaders we met with separately for a number of hours. Everybody's sort of holding their breath about whether or not they will ultimately be better off under this new regime. The president also took pains, I think it took about 40 minutes when it came to relations with Israel. A couple of things that he said, and I'm not sure that it necessarily changed, but perhaps it's moved forward. Said, number one, Israel is not the enemy of Syria, and Syria is no longer an enemy of Israel. Number two, whatever is going to happen, will have to happen incrementally. That means serious discussions and negotiations between the two parties. That's been going on now for a couple of months. And back then, basically towards the beginning of his tenure, he said the idea of joining the Abraham Accords was premature. And I think the Israelis also had very profound concerns. And I know that NTD has reported on terrible violence against the Druze minority and others in Syria. And the question is this a leader who can bring all of the factions together to live in peace with each other and set a situation where it can restore its economy and give hope to the future for all of the various divergent groups that currently make up Syria after those horrific years of civil war, of mass murder by Assad Jr.? There is great hope and there's great fear. But I think for today, the message from the President of the United States is I've decided to take off these sanctions to give Syria's leaders a chance to bring its country into the 21st century and into a situation where it can be at peace with its neighbors. And we hope, on the other hand, in order to be able to get to that plateau and climb that mountain, to get more and more signals from this regime that they are interested in peace with their neighbors and they're committed to showing respect, safety for all of the various groups that constitute the population of Syria.
Okay, Rabbi, we just have about 30 seconds. If you could answer within that time, this last question here. Al-Shara has said he's not willing to join the Abraham Accords. Would Israel be willing to work with Syria on it if that changed?
I think the answer is actually both sides agree it's too early to talk about the Abraham Accords. But if the negotiations go well and they stop shooting at each other and the minorities in Syria that currently are being protected really by Israel feel safer and don't feel they're going to be attacked and be murdered again, then I think down the road it could very well happen. I think a lot of people in Israel will be excited about it. But right now, the biggest concern is to make sure that Syria doesn't again become a opportunity for the Iranians, Hezbollah, and others to use it as a staging ground for attacks against the Jewish state.
Well, Rabbi, we'll be keeping a close eye on the situation and reporting it for our viewers. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Always good to see you. Thanks for having me.
The Senate is set to vote on amended continuing resolution after a group of moderate Democrats joined Republicans to pave the way to end the government shutdown. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has the details.
This is genuine. I mean this sincerely. We applaud the 7 Senate Democrats and 1 independent senator who did the right thing. They decided to put principle over their personal politics.
The deal reached over the weekend includes an amended continuing resolution that would fund government through the end of January 2026. It also includes a trio of appropriation bills to fund Agriculture Department, the Legislative Branch, Military Construction, and Veterans Affairs through fiscal year 2026.
I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement, but waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome. It would only mean more harm for families in New Hampshire and all across the country.
The deal would also ensure the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program would be funded through the end of fiscal year 2026. Senate Democrats who voted in favor of the deal have defended their posture despite Democratic leadership publicly opposing the bill.
My vote today was to do 2 things, both equally morally important and imperative. One is to make sure that the government is functioning and continue the fight to a realistic platform to get the premium tax cuts done.
Senate Republicans have promised, as part of the deal, to have a vote on the extension of the ACA healthcare subsidies before the end of the year.
As I assessed it, there was 0 chance of dealing with the ACA issue as long as the shutdown continued. Now, I don't know, 50-50?
The House of Representatives would still have to vote on the amended bill, and Democratic leadership in the House has already signaled that they will oppose it.
At the very moment that they do that final vote, I will call all House members to return to Washington as quickly as possible. We'll give a 36-hour formal and official notice.
It doesn't change the core problem here, which is we need to decisively address the Republican health care crisis.
House Republicans, including the budget hawks in the House Freedom Caucus, have signaled that they would support the bill in order to reopen government. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
The Senate has agreed to advance a bill to end the government shutdown. Joining us to discuss is Brian Lieb, a political strategist and CEO of Henry Public Relations, and we have George Carrillo, former Democratic candidate for governor of Oregon and former director of social determinants of health for Oregon. So, of course, good to have you both. Brian, I'll start with you today. 7 Democrats broke party lines, voted for the bill. This is a procedural vote. And Senate Majority Leader John Thune promised that the Senate will take up a vote on extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies later this year. So that's the overall gist of what happened. Brian, what are your initial thoughts?
Well, as someone that felt this government shutdown pain personally on Saturday trying to get home at the airport, I can tell you that I'm very happy that several Senate Democrats have decided to vote along with their Republican colleagues to reopen the government. At the end of the day, our politicians, whether they're on the left or the right, they were not the ones that were feeling the pain of this government shutdown. It was us, the American people, that felt the pain. And so I'm very happy that you have quite a bit of Senate Democrats that are willing to cross party lines to reopen the government. But I think once we get through this, if I'm being honest with you and with the audience, we've got to find a way to stop governing in this country from one continuing resolution to another, because these situations, they happen every single time. So bottom line, very happy to see Democrats and Republicans coming together to reopen the government.
Right. I think a lot of people would agree with you on the CR point, Brian. So, George, now let me go to you. How do you feel about the current situation as it stands?
Well, I'm disappointed in the Democratic Party. We had our biggest win last week where we swept the elections on Tuesday night. And then here, Senator Schumer proposed, I think, a good compromise on the ACA subsidies on Friday. And we didn't allow for enough time for negotiations to further. And Democrats caved, the ones that voted yes on this. So it's a double-edged sword for me because, yes, it's great that we're opening up the government, but also, too, the Democratic Party, they came out and said, Senator King came out today and said, that they can win against Trump. And so this is the outcome. So what was the point of these past 40 days of this government shutdown?
Okay, so Brian, what do you think about what George said? He sort of, raised the point that perhaps Democrats caved in this situation. What do you think ultimately persuaded the 7 Democrats to vote for this bill?
Well, with respect to my co-panelists, I think it's very unfortunate that someone is saying that they're not happy that the government is reopening. The fact that some of his Democratic colleagues in the Senate decided to cross party lines shows that bipartisanship still exists in this country. And I think that's a pretty positive thing for all of us to be happy about and be hopeful about, especially in the world of politics in America where everything is very divisive. But listen, for the Senate Democrats that decided to cross party lines and make a deal with Republicans, I give them an enormous amount of credit for stepping up and doing the right thing for the American people, regardless of their party. It was the right thing for every politician, regardless of being a Democrat or Republican, to do the right thing for the American people, to find a way to come to some kind of compromise and reopen the government.
So, George, didn't Democrats get a stopgap funding measure rather than a full fiscal year funding package? Because it buys Democrats more time to negotiate, right? By not locking into a full year package right now.
Right, but right now what's going to be compromised is those ACA subsidies. What's disappointing in this matter is that there's going to be about 20 million Americans that may possibly lose their health care. So we're talking about less accessibility. This was the right fight to have. Republicans were not negotiating with Democrats. And so we were standing strong on these healthcare subsidies. The president was trying to use not paying SNAP benefits as one of his tactics to put more pressure on the Democratic Party. The courts came in and said that Trump was overreaching like he has been. And so right here, where the disappointing point for myself and for the Democratic Party is that we're not really having compromises. This is a tug and war situation right now that's happening. And in the end, it's still going to be Americans that are going to lose out. Remember, there's going to be about 20 million people that are going to lose their health care. That is not a win in reopening the government.
Okay, Brian, do you think this bill addressed concerns on both sides of the aisle?
Well, I think the very kind of definition of compromise means that both sides are going to lose a little and both sides are going to win a little. So in a situation like we have right now, that's what happened. There's some things that Republicans wanted, there's some things that Democrats wanted, and both sides didn't get it, and they had to meet in the middle, and they had to compromise. But I want to just come back to the earlier point that I made. I mean, the fact that in 2025 and going on almost 250 years of our great country being in existence, that we're still governing from one CR to another, one crisis, to another, really got to find a way to do this better. Because trust me, the American people, regardless if you're, a Republican like myself or a Democrat like my colleague here, I don't think any of us are very happy to see grown men and women not being able to come to terms, for deals like this. So, I think it's a bigger issue in terms of how we're funding the government and the kind of money that we're spending in the first place. But bottom line is I'm pretty happy that our government's hopefully going to be reopening very soon.
So, George, maybe you can address what Brian said about going from one CR to the next.
So right now, our system of government right now isn't working for the American people. It's not about which side is losing. It's about the American people that are losing. We're seeing the top 1% get richer, and we're seeing the middle class and below really lose out on opportunities. We're seeing a weakened economy. We're seeing the US dollar being weakened. There's a lot of things that are happening right now that we're not addressing, and the people that are losing out are not the politicians. It's us. It's the American people that are losing out. So we really do need to look at our system of government, having a better checks and balance in our system, and being able to really compromise with each other and having conversations. The behavior of the House and what they've been doing by sending everybody home and not having conversations and figuring out how do we end this government shutdown and just keeping everybody home is not compromise. That's not good governance. And also on the Democratic Party too. They stood their ground and then they folded. And so now you look back at what was the point of the last 40 days? Why did we even go through this? I think both parties here are to blame, and we do need a better system of governance, but we need to start electing new people that understand the way governance should happen and how we need to proceed, and having conversations of each bill.
But George, Democrats did get a promise from John Thune that they're going to take up the ACA at a later date.
And we know right now that there's no votes in the Senate, that it's not going to pass. They didn't want to have a conversation about it while the government was shut down. Why are they now going to pass, these ACH credits now? Republicans have not proposed any new plan in creating better accessibility to healthcare for millions of Americans. So it doesn't bring me, the only thing that this does is going to put Republicans on the record of how they voted on this single action. And that's it. And still, at the end of the day, we're going to see millions of people lose out on accessibility to healthcare.
So, Brian, what do you think about the vote that was promised on ACA? How do you think that's going to go in the future?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think everyone's trying to negotiate in good faith right now. But listen, at the end of the day, the American people and the tens of thousands of people, the hundreds of thousands of troops that have been without pay now for over 35 days, they're the ones that are going to benefit from this. And again, have to go back to the fact that, this is a compromise. So there's things that the right wanted, the left wanted, both sides are not getting everything that they wanted. And they have to reach a compromise to reopen our government. And at the end of the day, it's the American people that are going to benefit from the government being reopened. So, I unfortunately don't share the opinion of my friends here, and I'm pretty happy that the government's reopening, And I think it shows that bipartisanship is still alive in this country. And I'm sorry that you're disappointed in your Democrats for not holding the line. But at the end of the day, I think the Democrats that decided to cross party lines are doing the right thing for the American people.
George, how do you respond to Brian saying that bipartisanship is still well and alive in America today?
I don't believe it's not, because I don't know what Republicans didn't get. They voted on a bill and nothing has changed from that bill. The only thing that's changed now is that we're going to have SNAP funded. So when we go through this exercise again in the end of June, they're not going to be able to use SNAP benefits for hostage how they did in this situation. So if we want to have better compromise, let's start playing by some fair rules and not putting this political pressure on the people like our federal employees who were also laid off during this time. The president took advantage of the situation. He has been able to keep funding mass immigration, keeping ICE paid for, but somehow doesn't have money to pay Americans who are going hungry every day through this government shutdown. He has played dirty politics in this, and Democrats at this point couldn't figure out how to continue to battle the president and come up with accessible access to healthcare. And so this right now, we'll see in the midterm elections how voters will vote. But I don't believe compromise is happening right now. It's political pressure that's happening.
But George, the bill prevents federal workers from layoffs, which is something that President Trump wanted to do, right, during the shutdown. Do you see this as a concession on the Republicans' part?
That's a small concession. I think, no matter what, the president's still going to try to continue to lay off employees. And we're only talking about the employees that he laid off during the shutdown. We're not talking about the hundreds of thousands of people that have already been laid off since he's taken office. So the government already has shrank. We're talking about a few hundred people that have lost their job during this shutdown. He's not going to be able to do again. But we'll see what happens, the next time we go through this exercise towards the end of June. We'll see if Republicans are actually willing to have that compromise and prevent another shutdown from happening.
Okay, Brian, we just have a bit of time left. If you have any final thoughts you would like to share right now.
I just want to address a comment that he made in that House Republicans and House Democrats were sent home by the Speaker. House Republicans have voted countless times now to reopen the government, so there's really nothing respectfully that they can be doing by sitting in Washington D.C. right now. So I think it's better, honestly, that they're back in their districts and they're doing things to meet with their constituents than sitting in Washington and doing nothing. And just in closing, again, I've said this, I think, 2 or 3 times now. This shows that there is bipartisanship that still is alive in this country. I applaud the Senate Democrats that cross party lines to make this happen. And listen, I think at the end of the day, if there's issues that are going to benefit the American people, the Republicans stand ready to tackle them head on. And everything in politics is always going to be a compromise.
Well, I think both of you presented your own arguments very well. Brian, George, thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
An end to the 41-day government shutdown is now in sight. On Capitol Hill late last night, a handful of Democrats voted with Republicans on a plan to reopen the government. There are still a few more steps before it takes effect, but it's a promising breakthrough. House Speaker Mike Johnson said this morning the House should vote as soon as possible. NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
Late Sunday night, senators broke a lengthy stalemate over government funding. 8 Democrats joined Republicans to advance a bill that will reopen the government after 40 days shut down.
Now, I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement, but waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome.
Part of the deal will require Republican leadership to hold a December vote on extending Obamacare subsidies. The vote may or may not pass due to lack of Republican support.
As everybody here knows, that is a totally meaningless gesture. You can get 100 votes here in the Senate. Won't mean anything because the House is not going to take it up.
Republican leaders in both chambers have said that the bipartisan negotiations will continue as they work out a new deal on Obamacare reforms.
These senators are not interested in political games. They're interested in finding real ways to address health care costs for American families. We also have a president who is willing to sit down and get to work on this issue.
Without a guaranteed outcome, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer did not support the deal to reopen the government. Last night's vote was the first step towards reopening. Senators will now attach a new bill to fully fund a few non-controversial aspects of government: military construction, Veterans Affairs, the Department of Agriculture, and the legislative branch. It also includes a stopgap measure to fund the rest of the government through January 30th. House lawmakers will return to Washington this week after nearly 2 months. The new bill is expected to easily pass the lower chamber. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Global shares rose today. Investors were optimistic after the Senate moved forward with a measure to reopen the government. Wall Street's main indexes opened higher this morning. The S&P 500 gained 1%, while Nasdaq advanced 1.6%. The Dow Jones climbed 250 points, or about 0.5%. Here's more on the market reactions.
Sunday's breakthrough helped push Nasdaq futures up over 1.2%. Asian markets were up Monday after the open. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan rose 1.36%, and Japan's Nikkei was up a similar amount, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index jumped 1.5%. The positive trend spread to Europe, where shares were also up. The Pan-European Stock 600 climbed 1.1% in early trade. The shutdown has taken a growing toll on the US economy. Federal workers from airports to law enforcement and the military have gone unpaid, while the central bank deals with limited government reporting of economic data. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett warned the country's fourth quarter GDP could be negative if the shutdown dragged on.
An influx of cash could be headed to millions of Americans. President Trump announced plans yesterday to offer $2,000 payments funded by tariff revenue to people outside high-income brackets. Trump wrote on Truth Social that the U.S. is taking in trillions of dollars and will soon begin paying down what he called the nation's enormous debt. He also highlighted what he described as record investment in new plants and factories nationwide. The plan would likely require congressional approval. Trump first raised the idea of a $2,000 tariff-funded dividend in early October. His latest announcement came just days after the Supreme Court heard arguments on the legality of his global tariff strategy. The president also said today that all leftover tariff revenue after $2,000 checks will be used to pay down national debt. And to talk more about this, joining us is Daniel Lacalle, the chief economist at Tressis and an international financial analyst, also the author of the book Freedom or Equality. So Daniel, always great to see you. So can we talk about the order of payments here? Because you just heard President Trump says he's going to pay households and then he's going to pay down the national debt.
Well, obviously, I think that the plan is to first get the public accounts in order, and then look for the opportunity to use part of these revenues to reduce the challenges that some of the families in the United States are facing. No, and obviously that $2,000 check is a very good idea once you take into account that the first and foremost objective has to be to control the national debt, and the national debt is obviously number one priority, has to be reducing the deficit to a sustainable level. I think that all those efforts are being taken, and obviously if he comes, if the tariff revenues come to the figures that he has mentioned, about $1 trillion, etc., that would obviously be plenty to reduce the deficit to more than by less than half of what it was, and at the same time pay these $2,000 checks.
So Daniel, if this in fact happens, where people get $2,000 checks, do you think that's going to be a boost for the U.S. economy?
Obviously, there's always a debate about the impact of these checks. Now we remember what happened with the stimulus checks of the COVID period. No, I think that what they do is more to provide a certain level of relief to citizens that are either entering into too much debt or that have some financial difficulties. So I personally don't care if people are going to use it for saving, to put it in the stock market, or to pay down debt. I think that all of those are perfectly positive outcomes. No, I think that what is important is that once the deficit is under control and once the level of debt of the United States to GDP is declining, and obviously if the economy is growing at a 3.8% and it brings down the deficit to half in dollar terms what it was, obviously that would be the case, then that would be a boost to the economy. But we cannot expect a massive increase in consumption. I am always aware that a tremendous number of people are going to be using it to pay down credit card debt, which is perfectly fine with me, or to invest in the stock market, which is also perfectly fine with me. I think that what is important is that those revenues that are coming from the trade agreement are used to the best possible solution. No, so on the one hand, if you think about this, bringing down the deficit means that the tax cuts that have been implemented can be increased. So that is a positive for citizens and their affordability. No, and number two, if they on top of that get a stimulus check, that can certainly be a relief. But I would consider it from that perspective. First, bringing down the deficit. Second, obviously, looking at what to do with these enormous, absolutely, and much higher than expected, to be fairly honest, revenues coming from tariffs.
So you raised the issue of stimulus checks. So how is this different from the stimulus checks that we got during the pandemic that actually fueled inflation?
Oh, absolutely different. It's a great question, because a lot of people say, oh, this is going to drive inflation higher. No, because the stimulus checks were paid with newly created money, with new deficit, with more money printing, more government spending, more debt. Okay, so and this is something that is sharing with citizens an external revenue. So this is not newly created money. This is not inflationary, and it's a huge difference. Here, big difference to print money to provide a stimulus that obviously then backlashes and boomerangs into inflationary effects, than to use revenues that are coming from abroad to relieve those citizens that are in a more difficult position.
So Daniel, can you explain a little bit to us a bit more? I know you talked about this in the past, but who pays for tariffs? If American companies, some of them do in fact pay for these tariffs, and then the money is then given back to Americans, would some people argue that this is wealth redistribution?
Well, it's not wealth redistribution. First, I think it's pretty evident that the tariffs are not paid by American consumers. I think it's very simple. If tariffs were paid by American consumers, no country in the world would have raised their eyes and lifted their hands to reach a trade agreement. They would have just said, come on, let's go and let's send our products at a much higher price. It is pretty evident that global supply chains have enormous levels of overcapacity, and that tariffs are being absorbed throughout the highest level of overcapacity in those chains. However, even if you have some companies that have experienced an increase in costs because of tariffs, then the tariff is not going into maintaining margins. It's maybe eroding a little bit their margins. But it's good ultimately that some consumers receive the revenues from tariffs. Ultimately, every single measure of a stimulus plan or every single measure of payment to the disadvantaged is is a measure of redistribution. But this is not redistribution. American companies are doing phenomenally. American companies are not paying higher prices. You look at the ISM prices paid, it is in line with the last 12 months. The only thing that the United States truly needs to deal with in order to bring down inflation and the cost of living is to reduce government spending, which means reducing the amount of money in the system, reducing newly created money, which is what creates inflation, which is obviously not, inflation is not the increase in prices. Inflation is the reduction in the purchasing power of the currency. So I think that ultimately, the vast majority of the US economy benefits from receiving more revenues from tariffs, getting a level playing field in trade that allows American companies to trade in a more logical and just way with the rest of the world. And if there is a control of the deficit and a control of the spending, as I expect to happen in 25, 26, obviously to get a stimulus check of this.
So Daniel, how do you think American trading partners will feel about tariffs being given to U.S. households? And keeping in mind, these Americans that are getting the checks potentially, are voters, right? So how do you think our trading partners might feel about that?
Well, let's think how the American people are thinking about the enormity of tariffs that the United States companies are suffering from the European Union. That are then used to massively bloat government spending and entitlement spending in France or in Germany. Ultimately, we're talking about management of public finances, and it is. I don't think that you can actually go to any of the US trading partners, from China to the European Union to the UK, and think that this is an unfair way of using tariff revenues when the European Union is using its gigantic trade surplus with the United States to finance its enormous level of government spending and of different social programs, the same as the UK. And nobody seems to be saying that Americans are paying for French pensions or that Americans are paying for UK roads, no?
No question, Daniel. And you mentioned the stock market earlier, like potentially people might invest in it. If they put the $2,000 into the stock market, do you think it could benefit the stock market in terms of it rising further?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. But more importantly, it allows a lot of people that are not invested in the US stock market to benefit from the improvement in profits and the improvement of the economy. I think that ultimately, when you look at all of this, what the Trump administration is trying to achieve is pretty much what the UK tried to do in the late 70s, what the United States also did in the early 80s, which is to make the benefits of the strength of corporations, of the American economy, of all of the different aspects that generate wealth available to all citizens. If they want to invest in the stock market or in Bitcoin for that matter, it doesn't matter. It is always a positive, and it is a much better way of making the people understand that this is a positive for them than to finance enormous government stimulus packages like the Build Back Better or the Inflation Reduction Act that don't build and don't reduce inflation.
Well, okay, Daniel, it's always enjoyable to hear your valuable insight. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much, Don. Have a great day.
Air travel across the United States is in turmoil as the government shutdown triggers massive flight cancellations and delays. According to flight tracking website FlightAware, more than 1,600 flights have been canceled so far today, with another 3,300 delayed. More than 2,700 flights were canceled yesterday and over 10,000 delayed, marking the worst day of travel disruption since the shutdown began. The FAA continues to grapple with severe staffing shortages in air traffic control towers across the nation. Delta Airlines has been particularly hard hit, canceling or delaying more than half of its mainline flights. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy said earlier the FAA would not cut any international flights, as it would be a violation of international agreements. Here's the Southwest airline pilot urging passengers yesterday to call their senators. Watch.
I don't really care what your political persuasion is, but you should really call your senator. Because I'll tell you, this is costing the airlines millions of dollars. And just think of 30 airplanes with one engine running. And it's going to take us at least 90 minutes to take off. So right now we're at a 4% reduction in flight capacity. Next week we go to 10. Last night I had a 6-hour delay in Houston, and the weather was perfect. It's because the air traffic controllers aren't getting paid.
As flight cancellations continue, President Trump is asking air traffic controllers to return to work today. Government-directed flight cuts and air traffic staffing absences continue to affect U.S. air travel. Trump says, quote, all air traffic controllers must get back to work, adding that he will be recommending a bonus of $10,000 per person for those who didn't stop working during the government shutdown. The president says the people who didn't work during the shutdown did a disservice to their country. He added that workers would have gotten paid despite the issues in Congress. The Supreme Court today is rejecting calls to overturn its landmark 2015 decision that legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. But the justices have agreed to hear a case that challenges the counting of mail-in ballots received after Election Day. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
The Supreme Court justices on Monday declined to hear an appeal from a former Kentucky court clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. The justices turned away Kim Davis, who said her faith prevented her from complying with the High Court's 2015 ruling. In September 2015, a federal judge jailed her for contempt of court. She was released after her staff issued the licenses on her behalf. 3 current justices dissented from the 2015 decision, including Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Chief Justice John Roberts. In other court decisions on Monday, the justices agreed to hear a case that challenges the counting of mail-in ballots received after Election Day. The state of Mississippi will defend a state law challenged by Republicans that allows a 5-day grace period for mail-in ballots received after Election Day to be counted. A lower court ruled the law was illegal. The justices are expected to hear the state's appeal and rule on it by June. And on the oral argument docket Monday, the justices will hear a case involving an individual's right to sue a government official for violations of a religious land law, and another case addressing a technical issue that has circuit courts divided over how soon an individual can appeal a case that's been terminated. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
A cancer risk warning label has been removed for menopause treatments using hormone replacement therapy. The FDA says after thorough research, they found no statistical significance for the warning. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
For years, women were told that HRT could cause breast cancer. Black box warnings on HRT products discouraged doctors from prescribing and patients from inquiring.
The Department of Health and Human Services is removing a black box warning label for menopause treatments that use hormone replacement therapy, or HRT. The warning says that menopause treatments containing estrogen can increase the risk of uterine and breast cancer as well as blood clots. Since 2003, prescriptions and the use of HRT for menopause dropped significantly after the label was applied.
Before the panic, 1 in 4 women used hormone replacement therapy. Today, it's fewer than 1 in 20.
The HHS says that a thorough analysis found that the study used to justify the label was flawed.
The study was not statistically significant, but it triggered a media frenzy and led to the FDA applying unscientific black box warnings to all hormone replacement therapy products in 2003.
Just like the medical groupthink that told us opioids were not addictive for 15 years, like the medical groupthink that said kids should avoid peanut butter until they're age 3 to prevent peanut allergies. It turns out it increases the risk of peanut allergies.
FDA Commissioner Marty McCary says that some studies on menopause hormone therapy have actually shown fewer breast cancer cases.
Women who took estrogen alone had a 24% reduction in breast cancer. And no clinical trial has ever shown that HRT increases the risk of breast cancer mortality.
Dr. McCary says that the correction is part of the administration's goal of restoring the public's trust in the health department.
We believe in evidence, science, patient choices, and restoring the doctor-patient relationships. The way that we restore the damaged public trust is by showing some humility.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
Vice President J.D. Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance visited military personnel undergoing therapy one day before Veterans Day. The couple visited the Military Advanced Training Center at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. They can be seen in video speaking with those undergoing recovery programs and talking with staff about the technology used at the center, including prosthetics use training. Staff and patients speaks about the various recovery programs offered, both aimed at countering the physical and mental trauma some experienced in military service. The facility is designed to offer recovering service members the latest technology to help them heal. Vance himself is a military veteran. Joining us now to discuss the Marines' 250th birthday and tomorrow's Veterans Day is Chris Lovell, retired U.S. Marine Corps Major and CEO and founder of Lovell Government Services. So Chris, good to have you here. The Marine Corps marking 250 years of service. So as a veteran yourself, what does this day mean to you?
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me on to talk about the Marine Corps' 250th birthday. Just a great organization, world's finest fighting force. No secret, we're happy to celebrate our birthday, and we let everyone know about it. And this year, it's a unique celebration. It's not only the 250th, but it's the first time in our history that we've had a Marine in the White House. Vice President J.D. Vance, is a shining example of what the Marine Corps does with young men and women. It takes great young men and women that are highly qualified to begin with, and just surrounds them with amazing leaders and mentors and opportunities to do things, beyond just self-service. It's service of others and thinking about others first, the team effort. And so it's fitting that he's been to a few Marine Corps balls, and obviously the Marines love it.
Right. And can we talk about the values here? Looking at the values that the Marines were founded on, do you think those values are still alive and well today?
Absolutely, Don. I think the Marine Corps is stronger now than it's ever been. The morale's highest that I think I've ever seen it. I think that the Marine Corps has a mission to take the best of Americans' youth and turn them into the most lethal fighting force on the face of the earth. And I think the Marine Corps has proved themselves time after time in battle. And I think it's if you're a young man or woman that wants an adventure and wants to do something bigger than yourself, and they say, once a Marine, always a Marine. Once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. And so that's something that they can't be taken away from you. So I encourage young men and women, if you're thinking about the Marine Corps, you haven't spoken to your recruiter, I highly recommend it. It's made a big impact on my life and a lot of the Marines that I've worked with over the years. And I don't think I could have made a better choice in stepping into the recruiting office as a young man.
And speaking of the younger generation, what do you hope the next generation of Marines carries forward?
I think the next generation of great young men and women that sign up to join the Marines carry with them the hope and the tradition and pride of all the Marines that went before them, that established the reputation that the Marines has and enjoys today throughout the world.
Has the mission of the Marine Corps evolved over the years? And if so, what's different?
I think the mission has always been to make Marines and win battles. That's the primary mission of the Marine Corps. And I think that maybe the tactics and the equipment and the technology has changed drastically. But the one thing that remains is that the most important thing about the Marines are a well-equipped and a well-trained Marine, and that will never change.
So, Chris, I also wanted to talk to you about tomorrow, Veterans Day. What does this mean, this day mean to veterans and Americans who had family or friends who served in the military?
Yeah, thanks, Don. I think for Veterans Day, it's just a day of reflection. It's a day we say, take a knee, take a breath, and think about all the things that you did for your service if you're a veteran. If you're not a veteran and you know a veteran, reach out, tell them thanks for your service. Ask them a little bit about what they did, what was their most memorable time in the service. And I think that would go a long way. And when I think about Veterans Day, whether it's the Marine Corps, whether it's the Army, Navy, Coast Guard, I think of selfless service. And I think of no better example than Major James Capers, who's 88. And he served ferociously in Vietnam and brought his entire team out through perilous conditions. And I think his actions were deserving of the Medal of Honor. And he stands as a bright, shining example of the best of America. My hat's off to Major Capers. I didn't know him when I joined the Marine Corps, but I knew of him. I saw his poster. He was the first African American to be in a Marine Corps recruiting poster, and it was Ask the Marines. And if for my generation, it was a pinnacle point in our lives. We saw that young captain on that poster in dress blues, and even though we didn't know the story, we didn't know who Major Capers was, we knew there's nobody tougher. And if that's the challenge you want, and you want to be like Major Capers, well, you need to join the Marines. And so a lot of us did.
So, Chris, I understand you do a lot of work helping with veterans, and we thank you for that. Can you tell us some of the common themes or maybe patterns that you have seen helping veterans with post-service life?
Thanks, Don. What we do is we work with over 250 companies to integrate the best that medical industry and technology has and make it available to the Veterans Administration, the folks that care for our veterans medically. And what we like to do is we are focusing on mental health. There are a lot of great technologies out there that veterans can utilize in their homes, a lot of it virtually, to help them with, say, PTSD or anxiety, which is a common kind of side effect of service. Of course, normal people deal with PTSD. There's also, first responders. But anxiety is a common human condition, and we pride ourselves in working with companies to bring the technology and therapies to help these veterans with their anxiety post-service.
And Chris, you said earlier that ordinary Americans can, help just by saying thank you for your service. I'm wondering, what more can regular people do to best help support veterans?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just talk to them. I think most veterans are really humble people. They're they're self-supportive, but it's always nice when someone reaches out, whether it's a family member or a friend or even another veteran, to check in on them, let them know you care, you appreciate their service. I think that's the number one thing you can do.
So for those veterans who are hesitant to seek help, what message would you want them to know?
Don't be afraid. It's okay, right? If you need help, there's so many veterans out there, family members, loved ones, whether they're veterans or not. Your service is appreciated. Your dedication isn't forgotten, and we love you. So if you need help and you're someplace where you feel like you need help, then reach out to someone. It's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable.
Okay, Chris, maybe I'll just ask you one more question. And this is big news today. The government shutdown potentially could be ending. But I want to know, what should the public understand about shutdowns that could impact the veteran community?
Yeah, I think I've seen this over the last 40 days of the impasse. Veterans get, if you're active duty, we've seen a little bit of anxiety about, hey, am I really going to get paid? I think the administration has done a great service to active duty forces that had their back and paid them in some unusual ways, but got the job done to make sure that our active duty members were paid and paid on time. I think that's a non-negotiable, regardless of the budget impasse, right? We should always pay our active duty members. They shouldn't have to worry about, hey, am I going to have enough money for groceries? The second thing we saw was veterans, services. For the most part, the VA is what's considered an essential organization, and it's always funded because, well, healthcare for veterans, you can't, post-surgery say, hey, we're out of funds, you got to go home after knee surgery. But at the end of the day, I think there were some veterans for the outreach programs, for some of those employees that were furloughed, for Veterans Administration folks working in the vocational and rehabilitation programs for post-service. I think there's a backlog now of about 10,000. So even though a lot of things were taken care of in terms of the budget for veterans and active duty members, I think there's a backlog now. And I think that backlog, affects real people. And I think it was really unnecessary.
Well, all right, Chris, I want to say it again. Thank you for the work that you do helping veterans, sincerely, and thank you for talking to us.
Thanks, Don.
Thousands attended the National Veterans Parade in the nation's capital over the weekend. Pardon me. Honoring the courage and sacrifice those serving in uniform gave to our country. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the story.
America. Here in the nation's capital, we celebrate veterans here at this parade with the Grand Marshal General Michael Flynn and many people paying tribute to veterans here around the world.
This is the National Veterans Parade Foundation that's putting on the only nationally recognized veterans parade in the country. Despite the government shutdown, this parade is going on without a penny from the U.S. government. And you can see that beautiful flag up there. So that's the fire department of Washington, D.C. that did this for us, and they're just wonderful, wonderful people.
This is the third annual National Veterans Parade, held right in front of the National Archives on Sunday, filled with veterans groups and marching bands. And it's taking place despite the government shutdown, with the help of grassroots support from private donations and sponsors.
Yeah, so I'm actually the daughter of a veteran, come from a long line of veterans, and so getting to spend days like this where we all come together and we acknowledge that service and that sacrifice that so many gave.
They have kept peace for 250 years. And it will be another 250 years for our next generation.
We were able to walk in the streets free today because of people like that.
I think it's very important that we celebrate those who have fought for us and just come together as a community.
It's so incredible to see the way that they selflessly give their lives to serve our country. We're protecting our nation's heroes by honoring them today. And I think
the event highlighted veterans facing suicide when they come home from service.
I think there's a misconception so often that they are some of the strongest and they have to remain that. But asking for help does not make you weak. Asking for help proves how strong you are.
Honoring them with the Spartan Pledge.
And what the Spartan Pledge is, it's a promise that us veterans or first responders, they make to one another for that they won't take their own life. They won't commit suicide because, as people know, we lose over 22 vets a day to suicide.
The Spartan sword was made with steel crafted from the Twin Towers in New York City, honoring veterans and first responders alike.
That is a symbol of what our country went through 25 years ago. And it means a lot to me as a veteran because I had to respond. I had to go to Afghanistan after 9/11. The firefighters, all the ambulance drivers, and the police officers that rushed into those Twin Towers that day. The Spartan Pledge is not only for veterans but first responders because on that day they were the warriors that were going in trying to save the people.
As we celebrate veterans on this wonderful day, we give thanks to all of the veterans who gave their sacrifice so that we can enjoy our freedoms here in USA. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Vice President J.D. Vance attending the Marine Corps 250th birthday ball in Washington. We discussed the significance of the day with someone who has served 24 years in active duty. Stay with us for after this break. The Trump administration has declared the first week of November as Anti-Communism Week. In a proclamation, the White House explained that this is a solemn remembrance of the devastation caused by the ideology. It said the U.S. is honoring the victims of oppression and ensuring the end of communism. It went on to say that the U.S. stands united in its defense of the values that define our nation as a free people. President Trump declared the week of November 2nd to the 8th as Anti-Communism Week. And a call to remember, November 7th marked the National Day for the Victims of Communism. In Atlanta, Georgia, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation held its Roll Call of Nations ceremony to honor more than 100 million victims of communist regimes worldwide. Let's take a look.
November 7th is National Day for the Victims of Communism. It marks the date of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, which initiated the spread of communist regimes. On the 108th anniversary of that day, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation held its Roll Call of Nations ceremony in Atlanta, Georgia.
This event commemorates the real flesh and blood families, individuals, people murdered by communism in the past. And at the same token, we are bearing witness that the crimes of communism are not over. They happen in places like China and North Korea and Cuba to this very day.
The event honors over 100 million lives crushed by communist regimes worldwide, featuring speeches from survivors and descendants. Dr. Eric Patterson is the president and CEO of the foundation.
It uses its guns and tanks and walls to keep its own people in, to repress its own people.
Jose Perez is a Cuban refugee and retired economist. He fled the country at age 12 in 1962. As a child, he witnessed televised execution under Fidel Castro's regime.
And he came in, Castro, and he said, that one should be guilty, that one is guilty. Then they set up kangaroo courts. And they condemned him. And they shot him. This little kid watched it on TV, and we saw these people just rolled over and fall dead. You go, that doesn't leave your mind as a young man.
Perez served on the Board of Regents for the University System of Georgia. He advocated for the state to establish a curriculum that teaches about communism's evils at the state level, which has now been implemented. Dr. Patterson also addressed the brutal persecution against Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa. The spiritual group is under severe repression by the communist regime in China.
It's been 26 years now since the terrible repression began in 1999 against Falun Dafa. And this is one of the most insidious recent persecutions, with the well-documented by our organization and others, organ harvesting, and many, many other crimes against those people.
Andrea Lauer Rice is the president of the Hungarian American Coalition. Her family was part of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution.
Every family member was involved in fighting for their freedom in some way.
She also says the recent New York City election presents an opportunity to teach young people more about communism.
Instead of just being horrified by the New York election results, we can look at it as an opportunity to teach the next generation that this ideology is an anathema to our American values.
Dr. Patterson said he hopes the event will raise awareness about the crimes of communism and help the next generation take a firm stand against today's communists.
Two top executives at the BBC quit yesterday following accusations of bias at the British broadcaster. One complaint involved a speech by President Trump in 2020. Here are the details.
Two top leaders of Britain's BBC resigned on Sunday amid allegations of bias at the broadcaster, including over the editing of a speech by President Donald Trump. Director General Tim Davie, the BBC's most senior executive, quit after an internal memo leaked by the Daily Telegraph newspaper had cited a string of failings. That included coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, trans issues, and edits of a speech made by Trump in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. The BBC's flagship Panorama show was found, according to the memo, to have edited two parts of Trump's speech together, so that it appeared he had encouraged the Capitol riot later that day. That documentary showed this part of Trump's speech.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
But in the Panorama episode, "We're Going to Walk Down to the Capitol" was shown cut together with other parts of his speech, including close to its end, where Trump said, "We fight like hell." Davie has led the BBC since 2020. He said he decided to leave after, quote, reflecting on the very intense personal and professional demands of managing this role over many years in these febrile times. The CEO of BBC News, Deborah Turness, also resigned Sunday. In an email to staff, she said, quote, "I want to be absolutely clear, recent allegations that BBC News is institutionally biased are wrong." Trump welcomed the departures, criticizing the two as very dishonest people. The leaked internal report had also said BBC Arabic had showed anti-Israel bias in its reporting of the war on Gaza, and that stories which raised difficult questions around trans issues have been suppressed by a small group of staff.
BBC News CEO Deborah Turness was in London to see her legal teams earlier today. She took questions from local media. Take a listen.
I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me. And if you'll excuse me,
why did you fail to deal with the mistakes that were made?
And see my teams. Thank you so much for being here.
Do you think that the journalists are corrupt, like President Trump says? Do you think the journalists?
Of course, our journalists aren't corrupt. Our journalists are hard-working people who strive for impartiality, and I will stand by their journalism.
Is there institutional bias at the BBC?
There is no institutional bias. Mistakes are made, but there's no institutional bias.
But why weren't the mistakes dealt with on Trump, on anti-Semitism, on women's rights?
I'm sure that story will emerge, but for now, I'm going to go in and see our team.
BBC Chair Samir Shah also apologized for an error of judgment in editing the Trump speech. Shah said the BBC had reviewed the footage and acknowledged it should have been clearer about changes made to the original remarks. Shah wrote to British lawmakers, quote, "It is absolutely clear the BBC must champion impartiality." Meanwhile, the BBC said today it had received a letter from President Trump threatening legal action. The broadcaster said it will respond in due course. And President Trump participates in a swearing-in ceremony for the U.S. ambassador to India. Let's take a look at that.
We weren't thrilled with, we got him out of here. But as my director of office and presidential personnel from the early days of transition, Sergio's leadership was essential to fulfilling the historic mandate entrusted to us by the American people. And that's what we've done with the help here at the White House. We set new benchmarks for presidential staffing. Nobody's done it, I think, hopefully better, but certainly quicker. But I don't think anybody's done it better. We have great people. We're surrounded by the people that I really do love and like and respect. But we hired 4,000 appointees across every federal department in record time, including over 1,000 appointments on day one. So before we even got started, we had over 1,000 people working for us. Under Sergio's leadership, federal agencies and departments reached staffing levels of 95%, and that's faster than any administration in modern-day history. And prior to his work on behalf of my 2024 campaign, Sergio had tremendous success as an entrepreneur in the publishing world. He even published my book, which went to #1. I was very happy because if it didn't, he wouldn't be here right now. But now I'm trusting Sergio to help strengthen one of our country's most important international relationships, and that's the strategic partnership with the Republic of India. It's a big deal. India is home to one of the world's oldest civilizations, the largest country in the world, actually, and it's got over 1.5 billion people. And we have a fantastic relationship with the Prime Minister, Modi, and Sergio's only enhanced that because he's become already friendly with the Prime Minister, knowing that Sergio is going to be the ambassador they would call constantly to say, let's get to know this man, and they like what they see. So I know you're going to have a great success over there. It's a very important relationship. But it's also the fastest growing middle class, and it's an important economic and strategic security partner in the Indo-Pacific region. It's an amazing country, actually. 1.5 billion people. China has 1.4 billion. Those are two big countries. As ambassador, Sergio will work to fortify our country's bond, promote investments in key U.S. industries and technologies, increase American energy exports, and expand our security cooperation. And you know, we're making a deal with India, a much different deal than we had in the past. So right now they don't love me, but they'll love us again. We're getting a fair deal, just a fair trade deal. We had pretty unfair trade deals. They're very good negotiators, Sergio, so you have to take a look at that, if you would, please. But we're getting close, Scott. I think we're pretty close to doing a deal that's good for everybody, right? In the old days, do you think Biden would ask that question? I don't think so. They'd say, how are we doing with India? He didn't know about India. He didn't know a damn thing. But that's okay. We had him. Likewise, in Sergio's role as special envoy to South and Central Asia, he'll be a key emissary to a very important group of nations at the crossroads between East and West. And last week, I was honored to host the leaders of 5 Central Asian countries here in the White House. and Sergio will be helping with all of that. We had an amazing meeting the other night at the White House, and I'm confident that Sergio will do an outstanding job and make our country and all of his friends very proud. But I'm very proud of Sergio. I've known him for a long time, and he's a great guy. And most people love him. Some people don't like him so much. I'll be honest with you, Sergio. I said some people, when they don't like Sergio, they don't like him. But when they like him more than anybody. But most of them really are the like category. And I just want to say that I think he's going to be an outstanding representative for the United States of America. And it's a big deal. Being the ambassador to India is a big deal. So, Sergio, congratulations. I know you're going to do a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Mr. Vice President, you'll swear in.
Okay. Swear him in here.
Left hand up, right hand up.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. I appreciate the assistance. We have such a crowd here, you'd think we're swearing in a vice president, sir. Okay. Please repeat after me. I, Sergio Gore.
I, Sergio Gore.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties.
Discharge the duties.
Of the office on which I am about to enter.
Of the office of which I'm about to enter.
So help you God?
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Mr. President, this is an honor of a lifetime. I want to thank first you, what you have done for this country before you came back in, the trouble that this country was facing. I mean, frankly, we were screwed. What you have achieved in 10 months has been historic, has surpassed any other presidency, and I fully believe what you will achieve in the next 3 years will never be beaten. So it has been an honor to serve you. I've been at your side for many years. I will continue to be there. And it's just an incredible honor. And I look forward to enhancing the relationship between our two nations. But again, thank you for entrusting me with this position. And I look forward to doing a great job for you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. First of all, congratulations, Sergio. You're going to be a great ambassador, a great representative to the country of India, which the President and I both love. As a lot of you know, Sergio was a critical piece of what made the first 10 months such a great success. Obviously, the President's leadership is the most important thing, but you can't do a whole lot unless you've got good people around you. And Sergio did as much as anybody to ensure that the White House was staffed with the very best people, people who were loyal to the President, loyal to the country, and loyal to the agenda that we're trying to implement. So thank you all for being here. I think it's a great testament to you, Sergio, that you got multiple cabinet secretaries, Erica Kirk, the President of the United States. This crowd would not turn out for just anybody, but it turned out for Sergio Gore. You're going to do a hell of a job, man. Congratulations.
Well, just to echo what Sergio said, Mr. President, you've done a lot for this country, more than any other president has in such a short period of time. And part of that is putting together a phenomenal team. And I know Sergio was instrumental in helping you achieve that. And so we think he'll do a great job. This is a very impressive collection of people. There are almost 1.5 billion people in the Oval Office right now. But Sergio's going to do a phenomenal job. Those of us who've known him, so many of his friends that are here and family as well that know how hard he works, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And that's what it takes to work in this administration because of how much you're pushing our country forward around the world and here at home. And we know Sergio will do a great job. So congratulations, Sergio. You're going to do a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Janine, please.
Well, I'm very proud to be here with Sergio, my friend, has been my friend for many years. He is someone who is loyal, he is trustworthy, and he works as hard as anyone I know. And Mr. President, there is in this room a group of people who love you, who believe in you, and who are so proud to be in this Oval Office and to be part of this amazing day, because you have changed the course of America. You, and thank you, Sergio, for what you've done. God bless you both.
Well, he was also very good friends with a guy named Charlie. We just knew him as Charlie, and his wife, who we love so much, is here with us. And maybe you know how close they were together. Maybe, Erica, you could say a couple of words, please.
I'm honored to, sir. Charlie loved you. It's hard not to get emotional because I know that he would have been the first phone call when he found out that you were going to be taking this position. And the way that I was able to witness the two of you work together for years and to champion and support the president was absolutely humbling to witness. And I am so proud of you. And Charlie is going to be with you every single day in spirit, and I will be praying for you every day because I know that this is just the beginning of an incredible opportunity for you. And sir, thank you for allowing Sergio to have this beautiful moment.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tara. And that man's watching over us right now, right? Okay. Any questions?
You mentioned senators that are here, Mr. President.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.